Judy Bentz. Judy let me know ahead of time that she wouldn't be able to make the meeting today. John Browning.
Here.
Steve Burtman.
Steve Burtman here.
Bill Clegg. He may be muted. I did see him.
I did too.
Matt Hudson. Yeah.
Here.
Matt Hudson.
Matt Hudson is here.
Rick Gonzalez.
Present.
John Phelps.
Here.
Cliff Smith.
I'm present.
We do have quorum. We have everybody but you.
Okay. Then, Sarah, I would like to go ahead and ask each commissioner to introduce themselves, and then I will ask Tim to introduce himself and staff and see if there's any guests. Let's talk with John Phelps first. Who are you, John?
Well, that's the existential question.
Forget that part.
I'm John Phelps, and I am staff director of the Senate Rules Committee.
All right, that's what you want to say. Bill Clegg. Are you with us, Bill?
Yes,
Steve Burtman.
This is Steve Burtman. I'm
Okay.
going to go on mute because the pesticide guys are in my backyard and my dogs are very, very upset.
Thank you, Steve. That's a great introduction. It's the most unusual we've had. Okay, we're going to go to John Browning next.
I'm John Browning, down here right outside of St. Augustine, and I am also on the Florida Transportation Commission and a couple other state things. Glad to be here and look forward to the meeting.
Thank you. Rick Gonzalez.
Good morning, everyone. Rick Gonzalez, president of REG Architects in West Palm Beach, and also expert member of the Advisory Council of Historic Preservation.
All right, Cliff Smith.
yes, good morning. I'm Dr. Clifford Smith. I'm chairman of the National Review Board and senior planner for the city of Sarasota.
Thank you, Matt Hudson.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Matt Hudson. I'm in Tallahassee, and I am a recovering politician, having served 9 years in the Florida legislature. And now I work remotely, and I started working remotely before working remotely was cool. I'm in a healthcare sphere. So thank you for
All right.
allowing me to speak.
Of course, a politician, we would certainly allow you to speak.
That's
Chris
not always the
Smith.
safest thing, let's be fair.
You might want to reconsider, Marion.
Yeah, maybe so. I've always liked him, though, you know, so. Chris Smith. Is Chris out there? Okay, then we won't hear from Chris. Okay, Dr. Parsons, would you like to introduce yourself and your staff, et cetera?
Sure. Thank you, Marion. I'm Tim Parsons. I'm the division director and the SHPO for the state of Florida. We also have Sarah Lico here, who's our program administrator, Angie Tomlinson in the room, who is our assistant director, and Alyssa Lotane, who is our bureau chief of historic preservation. Also on the line, we might have Katie Miar, our bureau chief of archaeological research, though I'm not 100% sure if she was going to be able to join us today. And if there are other staff members out there in the internet universe, I'm not aware of them, but please let us know that you're there.
Michael.
Well, Michael
Hi,
Hart's
Tim, I'm
there.
here.
Michael Hart's always here holding it down, so thank you, Michael.
I think John's on the way.
Hi, Tim, I'm here.
Oh, okay, great, wonderful.
Okay.
Well, Katie is here, so we've got adequate representation from around the division. Unfortunately, Lisa Barton, who is our bureau chief of historical museums, can't be with us today, but I'll provide some updates on her behalf.
All right, thank you. Are there any guests online or in Tallahassee? Hearing none, seeing none, we'll go to the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to alter the agenda or to adopt as emailed?
Motion to adopt.
I would second that motion. Clifford Smith.
Okay, thank you, Cliff. Who made the motion?
Matt,
Matt, thank you, Matt. If everybody would, I can't always see you talking here. Okay, we have an motion then to adopt the agenda as emailed. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, likewise. All right, approval of the minutes from May 7th. Do we have any comments on the minutes as emailed?
Marion, I had a comment, if I may. This is John Phelps. There was a mention made at the end of our last meeting, I guess it was under other business, when there was some discussion of asking the secretary to come and join us for a meeting to talk a little bit about the role of the commission in the future, given the results of the legislative sessions for the last 2 years.
Yes. Do we know what happened to that?
Yeah, this is Tim, Marion. I talked to Secretary Lee shortly after that. She was really enthusiastic about having the opportunity to talk with the Historical Commission. I was hoping she could be here for this meeting, but unfortunately she's not in town, so she's not able to join us for this meeting. But I'm very hopeful that she can join us for the next meeting, and I'll explain why when we get to my comments, because I think it'll be a very opportune meeting for her to be a part of.
Okay, then with the addition, I presume, of John's mention of inviting the secretary to join us, are there any other changes or corrections? Hearing none, I'm going to ask for, I don't have a motion yet, right? John just told us about the change. So I'm asking for a motion for the minutes to adopt with one change.
So moved. John Phelps.
second.
Thank you,
Matt
John
Hudson.
Phelps. Matt, second. Thank you very much. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you very much. We're going to move to the chairman's comments. Marion does not have anything to say other than I was hoping that we would see the Secretary of State, considering our last legislative sessions, as John said. But I think my comments or questions or desire to discuss really will fall under the director's comments. I'm interested in the potential for new members. I'm wondering if the meetings remain online, any legislative updates. That's kind of what I'm curious about, and perhaps the director could answer those in his comments next.
I think that means it's my turn. Well, I think I have answers to those questions. I'll do some reorganization of my comments here, and I'll start with new members. I am very, 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 very hopeful that we'll have new members even as early as today. It really just depends, so I have been told, on when the press releases and the appointment letters go out. So everyone keep your fingers crossed. That would be great news. But of course, I actually was just talking to Dr. Smith about this not too long ago. Many times, I would say 8 times or 9 times out of 10, when new members are appointed to the Historical Commission, the new members find out and the press release goes out before we are officially notified. So it's likely if there are new appointees and if there are people that are reappointed, you will know before I do. But that being said, when we do find out, we'll let everyone know. A lot of times they send out appointment notices on Fridays. Hopefully that'll be today. I know we've kind of been enthusiastic about it before, but it really does seem like this time it's going to happen. So everyone, please keep your fingers crossed.
If I may say, this is Marion, this is great news. As you know, I have desired to be unappointed, replaced, removed for about the last 4 years. I've done this off and on, actually for 30 years, which is ridiculous, through 4 governors. And I've enjoyed it all, but I am ready to go. So in case I go, I want to say I'm happy to go. There will be no tears. Sorry for that personal
Well,
point of privilege.
Well, I will say that much to my eternal regret, yes, that was part of the right. You know, they ask us not so much for recommendations, but kind of like if you have anything that you would like to say about this Department of State, what is it? And so I did pass that along, that you had no overwhelming desire to be reappointed. So.
Well, I enjoy it. I like everybody, but it's time for new people.
Well, fingers crossed, we'll get those appointments soon, because I know it's particularly important for the National Register Review Board, and it'll make everyone's life that's involved with that process tremendously easier once we get some new appointments on that board. So go ahead, Marion. I'm sorry.
No, that was it. I just said, please go on.
Okay.
Tim, I did have, this is John Phelps. I just wanted to be sure you were talking about governor's appointments. Am I right?
That's correct. Governor's appointments.
Okay.
Yeah, we typically on a pretty regular schedule get y'all's reappointment letters from the House and the Senate. So.
Okay.
I think, am I wrong? Those are every 2 years, correct?
I think so.
I think so. As for the rest of my updates, I do have a legislative update coming up in a second, but that's relevant to the first bullet that I have on here, which is that for about 2 years now, we've been talking about the Division of Historical Resources reorganization, which primarily would include bringing the state's historical museums back under kind of the umbrella of the Division of Historical Resources. That was made official in the last legislative session, and so we have been going through the steps with the Department of Management Services and the Governor's Office to kind of make that official on the org chart level, and we're nearing the finish line with that. It's all but done. The museums are now functionally in DHR. It is in the budget that the museums that was passed in the last session that the Knott House Museum, Mission San Luis, the Grove Museum, and the Museum of Florida History are all back in DHR. That is being consolidated in a new bureau that is actually an old bureau from many years ago called the Bureau of Historical Museums. And so we're very, very glad that we're crossing the finish line on that, and I'm thrilled that the museums are back home, I think, where they're supposed to be in the Division of Historical Resources. So that brings the total number of full-time employees in DHR. I have 84, but I think that's actually going to be 83 before too long, and I'll explain why. So, around 80 of full-time permanent employees. That does not include OPS employees, which pushes that number up considerably over to over 100, well over 100. As part of that reorganization, however, the Florida Folklife Program is leaving DHR and now resides in the Division of Arts and Culture. That actually has less to do with the reorganizational strategy than it did with how the funding structure from the federal government, from, I almost said NHA, but that's not correct.
National Endowment for the Arts.
National Endowment for the Arts, the NEA, have changed their funding structure, and they are only providing funding for folklife programs around the country to the state arts agency. So DHR could no longer even apply for that funding as we have for many years. The NEA is giving it directly to the state arts agencies without any application necessary. In Florida, that is the Division of Arts and Culture. So we had to go through the process of having the Folklife Program moved over there, which we're sort of disappointed about, but in a way it goes full circle because the Florida Folklife Program started out in that division, which was until recently called the Division of Cultural Affairs. Thank you, Angie. Boy, I'm having a day. So that's kind of the overall program realignment that has taken place. That overall, by and large, is a very good thing. It does make my job a whole lot busier. But it's great. I've really enjoyed it, and I think it's good to have the museums back in DHR. The final thought in that regard is one thing that we did is we more and more have been fortunate to be able to move forward with historic properties maintenance programs, and at the same time, after Suzanne Hunt's retirement, we also needed somebody to take over and oversee our outreach programs. We've tapped John Grandage, who is the former executive director of the Grove Museum, to to oversee those operations for the division. So John Grandage oversees public outreach on our behalf, and he also has a lot of experience through working with the Grove, as well as a family history in working in construction. And so he's managing our historic properties maintenance activities. With regard to properties maintenance, we've made some structural improvements to the Knott House Museum in the last few months. We're about to get started on a big project at the Carriage House, which is right next to the Governor Martin House and is a contributing structure to that historic district. And we're also in the middle of a huge project to kind of revitalize and essentially redo the Miami Circle. And that project is about halfway done. We're getting pretty close to completion on that one. So a lot of properties maintenance activities. We're doing our best to kind of address a lot of deferred maintenance over the last few years. And, you know, John has really kind of taken that bull by the horns, and we have a lot of things over the next, you know, we're kind of in the beginning process of putting together a real 5-year plan for how we want to address our ongoing maintenance issues. And so hopefully, if anyone is interested, we'll have a more detailed kind of plan in place, or at least tentative plan, in the next few months to share. Marion, you asked about a legislative update. We have submitted we have prepared our legislative budget request for the next session. Of course, it hasn't been finalized or completely accepted yet. We're working with our leadership to finalize that budget request. By and large, it's the normal kind of things that you would see coming from DHR, including you know, vehicles and other kinds of programmatic support. I'll have a more thorough update in November once that's finalized and what we actually know for sure is going to be included in our agency request, and maybe even by then the governor's request. So please stay tuned. I'm sorry I don't have more details now, but we're still finalizing that process. Marion, did you have anything specific about legislative updates that you wanted to ask?
I think I was thinking this morning when I made these notes, was there any legislation that was passed besides the cemetery bill, I guess it was, for black cemeteries and the funding? Was there anything else that related to us that we should be updated about?
There is one thing, and so I'll skip around a little bit and get to that because that's actually on my list. There was an appropriation made for African American cultural and historical grants. And the broad stroke of that is that the Florida Arts Council and the Florida Historical Commission, as a joint panel, essentially, something along those lines, would be involved in awarding African American cultural and historical grants. I believe the appropriation was for a little above $30 million, but it's probably going to end up being less.
Yeah, this is Angie. So this funding is in proviso at the back of the bill, and there are a lot of programs for various agencies that were funded via this, but it's actually federal pass-through money from the American Rescue Recovery Act. So it is coronavirus related. It's supposed to, so like we're tasked with our sort of this program, which we're still working with OPB on developing guidelines and procedures for. It's focused more on like economic recovery, but the proviso language specifically focuses on 6 capital outlay projects at historical and cultural museums, or not museums, but like projects related to African American history in Florida. And we're working jointly with the Division of Arts and Culture on that, because that's also in the proviso language. That's sort of the overview of that.
And honestly, right now, that's kind of the extent of what we know. As Angie mentioned, we're still working on finalizing the guidelines with DAC and OPB. Yeah.
Oh, I forgot that the proviso language says $30 million, but OPB has told us recently that it is actually less than that because it's related to how the funding is coming from the Treasury Department. So it's not actually $30 million, even though I think it's closer to low 20 million. I mean, it's still a good amount, but it's not the 30 million in the proviso language. It's a little bit lower than that.
So we're waiting for those guidelines to be finalized, and then we'll go from there. That's kind of at the stage that we're at right now. The other legislative item that Marion mentioned was the Abandoned African American Cemeteries Task Force. We did get that task force kicked off. We had our first meeting at the end of July. That was mostly an organizational meeting to kind of give the task force members an overview of what the goal of the task force was, kind of what their mission is, and then to lay the groundwork for future meetings and what we were going to go over. So that we're very hopeful that we'll get some good recommendations for the task force. What will ultimately arise from this is a report that's due to the legislature on the governor and the legislature on January 1st, 2022, ahead of the legislative session, where the task force will outline its recommendations to the legislature. So, obviously we've only had one meeting, so we don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet. But over the next few months, that will start coming together, and I'm pretty excited to see what the task force comes up with. Secretary Lee has designated me as the chair of the task force, which is a real privilege, and there are just a host of very talented, intelligent, and thoughtful people on that task force. So I have no doubt that there'll be at least several good, solid recommendations to the legislature that they could then choose to take action on if they wanted to. So more details on that obviously will be available in November, because we should have had at least 2 more meetings by then, so the picture will be clearer as far as what direction the task force is going to want to go with their reports and their recommendations. To bounce back for a second to the museum world, since I mentioned that John Grandage, who directed the Grove Museum, has now taken a new position in DHR, we have hired a new Grove executive director. Her name is Amanda Martin Harmon. She comes out of the museum world in the Midwest. She's very enthusiastic about coming to Florida, and she is starting next month. So that's great news. And hopefully, at some point in the near future, I would love to be able to take the commissioners on a tour of not just the Grove, but also our other museum properties. One, because we haven't really been able to do anything like that for the last year and a half. And two, I don't know that all of you have actually been to the Grove, which, I don't want to play favorites. I like all of our museums, but man, I really love the Grove. So hopefully, after she gets settled in, and perhaps by the time our next meeting rolls around, we'll be able to take everybody on a tour of the grounds and of the house over there, because it's really a marvelous exhibit and a great museum.
Hey, Tim, this is Matt. I hate to admit this out loud, but I am one of those people that has not been to the Grove. So I can't wait for that tour. And, if you don't have anything going on Tuesday, I'm good then too. Just saying. So. Well,
I was going to say, you're in Tallahassee, so just give me a call, and we'll pick a time that works for us, and we'll just go over there. And John will do most of the talking, because he has an encyclopedic knowledge of the place, but we'll walk you around and give you a tour.
Sounds fantastic to me.
And that goes for everybody, of course, anybody that wants a tour. Come on by.
The great.
I'll follow up with you. We'll make it happen.
Cool.
We also are advertising for the Mission San Luis Executive Director, and so that announcement should be going out soon. So if you know anybody that wants to be the boss over at Mission San Luis, please tell them to keep an eye out on people first, because we're looking for a great museum professional to take that job. My last comment that I have prepared, although I'm happy to answer any questions, is I got a call, it was either yesterday or the day before yesterday, from one of our colleagues at DMS. They have a couple of monuments, really just one in particular, that they need input from the Historical Commission on. And I told her that, well, that we can't put you on the agenda for today because it's already been noticed, but we can do it in November. Well, they need to place this before that time. So the monument is the Rolling Thunder Monument. Essentially, I think what we're probably going to ask, I need to follow up with her again, but I just wanted to put this on y'all's radar now. What we will probably try to do is schedule a very, very brief, I mean like 15-minute Zoom call for sometime in the next couple of months, to give DMS the opportunity to present this monument to the Historical Commission, and then to get any feedback from you that you would like to provide to DMS, so that they can move forward with finalizing this with regard to placement and get it placed on schedule. I think they're trying to meet a holiday deadline or something along those lines. We didn't talk for very long, but I did just want to put that on your radar to look out for an email, probably a poll, to see when we could get a quorum to do that. And again, we try to avoid doing that whenever possible, but they're just under a time crunch, so we thought we would try to help them out. And again, I think I wouldn't expect it to take any more than 15 or 20 minutes, and it should be pretty speedy. So that concludes the comments that I have prepared. But if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Commissioners, are there questions?
Tim, this is John Phelps. Are your antenna out in a way to sort of forecast what might be coming in the legislative session in the way of substantive policy? Have you been consulted about anything?
So far, not yet.
Okay.
The one thing that's sort of on our radar that came up last year that is probably going to come up again, Alyssa just reminded me, is state tax credits, historic preservation tax credits, which, of course, we'd be enthusiastic about. They've been very, very successful in other states, and they tend to bolster the federal tax credit. Alyssa, you might want to give an update on that in your updates, because you've been more involved in that than I have. But my understanding is that they intend to try and push that again this year.
I don't have too much of an update, just that I do know the sponsor that was not able to do it last year is interested this year, and Mark Zuberly, who is the board member for the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation, I know he's been working those angles, and obviously we can't advocate, but I have read the text and kind of am working with him, on any issues of that nature.
Tim, I have a question. You just mentioned a historic tax credit by the state. Would that be for just government and 501c3 or commercial? What's the parameters? Do you have any idea?
Commercial.
It would largely mirror the federal tax credit and operate in kind of the same way. So, essentially, privately owned for-profit businesses and buildings, that sort of thing.
Yeah, commercial property.
Commercial property.
As not to recreate an entirely new process, because we just don't have the staff to do that at this time, it would basically mirror the federal one, and not add too many additional forms. So kind of like if you get the federal, then you get the state. You show that you're approved for the federal one, then you would turn your paperwork into the Department of Revenue, and then they would do a lot of the way it's set up right now would do a lot of that process instead of us. We would just sort of sign off on yes, we saw it, and we know that they got federal.
Thank you. That would be a huge step forward for historic preservation.
It's huge. It's so huge because so many other states have it and we don't have it. It'll change. We will start seeing a lot more saving and reuse of historic buildings in Florida with this. It's a great program. I'm glad it's finally happening. I have clients that have been waiting 5-10 years for this to happen. So thank you, Alyssa and Tim, for pushing this forward.
And just one more thought on that. One difficulty that has happened through the years is because we don't have a state income tax. That's how a lot of the other states, process the credit. And so what we came up with, if it all works, is that it would offset the franchise tax, the sort of cost of doing business tax, and then also potentially the insurance premium tax, which my understanding is that there's not anything else maybe that will offset that. So that's the way it's sort of proposed at the moment.
Any more questions for Tim? If not, then why don't we move to item 7, committee reports, Bureau of Archaeological Research, Dr. Katie Mylar.
Hi, thank you, Marianne. I'll just highlight, to keep it brief, just a couple of projects and programs from our Bureau. Essential travel and field work has resumed. That was previously postponed in 2020. And now that's finally allowed Bureau of Archaeological Research staff to conduct our necessary statutory operations and field work and responses. Something that also started gearing up, it seemed pretty much since May, is the human remains cases. Part of my job as a state archaeologist under statute 872 is to respond to any non-forensic archaeological human remains cases and decide and determine jurisdiction for the these cases. And it really had been gearing up. In May, we had 9 new cases. In June, 12 new cases. July, 8 cases. And so far, 2 new cases in August. And this requires quite a bit of response time. And some of these cases end up remaining open for years, depending on the kind of field work that's involved. And I serve as usually a liaison between the state and developers and CRM firms and tribal governments. And on the back end of that, so we work closely with all our different bureaus. So we have an underwater archaeology program, our public lands archaeology program, as well as our collections conservation staff. And some of these human remains cases end up coming to our collections conservation program, where we then have to comply with the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. So there's a lot of work that happens both in the front and the back ends of these cases, and we work closely with the tribes on that. And we currently have a few repatriation cases that we're working closely with the tribes on to repatriate and rebury some of these remains. And 2 of these cases actually responded and necessitated underwater investigations, 2 of these human remains cases. And so one was along the St. Johns River in Volusia County, another was in Venice Beach in Sarasota County. And our underwater archaeologists worked alongside law enforcement and their dive teams to help investigate those areas. They did diver surveys and remote sensing. They didn't yield any new human remains, thank goodness, nor did it seem that they were eroding from any archaeological sites that they could identify right in the vicinity. But these cases really help strengthen our interagency cooperation and partnerships, and showcases BAR really has a strong commitment to assist law enforcement, both on terrestrial sites to assist with looting cases and various other cases, in particular with FWC, but also with sheriff's offices and police departments in these types of cases too. And I work very closely with medical examiners and law enforcement on cases as well to help determine if something's forensically significant or not. And this kind of also leads into that Coastal Zone Enhancement Program grant that I spoke about the last meeting for our underwater department, which funds the creation of a hands-on underwater archaeological resource management training for Florida land managers and law enforcement. And so basically out of that, BAR staff will provide classroom, on the water, guided programs to law enforcement and land managers focusing on state laws, submerged resources, legal activities, and best managed practices. So it all ties together. Another thing I quickly wanted to highlight is in our collections facility, one of our statutory requirements under 267 is to complete annual audits of our state's archaeological collections. And despite any pandemic setbacks in the beginning, our collection staff successfully completed all those audits in a timely manner. And they did this now. We're using our new database, which has really become a top of the line database that other agencies are asking us about. And we're really been pushing the boundaries of having a database that's able to consolidate all the information necessary and all the documentation, all the archival information for these archaeological collections. And it really helps synthesize this information for researchers, and also when I'm conducting NAG for repatriations and other things. So our collection staff made lemonade out of lemons during the pandemic and went whole hog into making this new database work well. And it's really become a prime example for other agencies. It's great. One other thing that our collection staff has also done is, well, they had to get creative during the pandemic for researchers, and they did a lot of 3D models of artifacts that people were trying to conduct research on. And they also loaned out collections to universities and helped pack and ship those out so that people could still conduct research, even though our facility was closed to the public. But now we're allowing researchers back into the office, and they've already facilitated 5 different researchers in the past 2 months there. And so there's a lot of research being conducted on our state's archaeological collections. And I think that's all I want to highlight and not take up everybody's time. Any questions, I'm welcome to answer.
Thank you, Katie. Are there questions from commissioners? Well, that was pretty lucky. Why don't we go to the Bureau of Historic Preservation, Alyssa Lotain.
Good morning. First, I want to highlight that July 20th through 23rd, we held our Preservation on Main Street conference in Newport Richey, and it was very successful. This was the, well, I say the first time we had partnered with the Florida Trust. The first time we partnered with the Florida Trust in person to hold this conference. We had planned to do it in Newport Richey last year and ended up doing it virtually. So we had approximately, we're still finalizing the numbers, but approximately 220 attendees. I know Commissioner Gonzalez was there, and lots of colleagues from both the preservation world and the Main Street world, and it was just a really great synergy that happened there. We're up to 50 Main Streets around the state. We were very fortunate that Secretary Lee was able to attend the conference and come and have a tour of the downtown Newport Richey area and meet with business owners. And then she also attended our Preservation and Main Street Awards ceremony and presented those for us. We're thankful that she was able to be there. Also, another big item is we are working toward our comprehensive plan, our statewide historic preservation comprehensive plan for 22 through 26. And so we need to have that completed by November to get that to the National Park Service. Our survey for the public and you all as well is still open on our website. It will close on, I believe it's August 15th. And then we'll compile the public submissions and set our goals and objectives for the next 5 years. Another big thing. We have a lot of big things going on right now, actually. We've been working on countywide surveys. So we got some funding through the Hurricane Michael grant, the National Park Service grant, and we decided to use a portion of that to do countywide surveys for those counties that were most affected. And that is because there had been so little historic structure survey done in those counties. A couple of them had 0.04% of their historic resources that had been surveyed. And so what happens is we see these projects, post-disaster through our compliance and review process. And it's very difficult to determine without that survey how buildings are associated. You see some buildings and they're very grand, but there are other areas where you see buildings piecemeal, and they may not be a grand building, but they have a lot of importance to the community. They may be part of a larger district in a larger context, and that's something we've really been missing. So in order to better prepare ourselves and local governments for future disasters, we're using actually $2 million of the Hurricane Michael funding, and we'll be doing 4 countywide surveys. Those are actually out on the street on my Florida Marketplace right now, and that will be for Liberty County, Calhoun, Gulf, and Jackson County. So we're hoping to get some good proposals on those. We have another survey out for Gadsden County for $50,000 that we have from our normal Historic Preservation Fund grant, the annual grant that we get, and we decided to use those funds to look at rural, agricultural, and underserved areas of Gadsden County. So that RFP is on the street as well in my Florida Marketplace. We have selected a vendor for our contract for disaster preparedness and mitigation documents that we're updating, and that was done through funds that we have from the Hurricane Irma grant. So we had our kickoff meeting on Monday to discuss that. It'll be, I think, an 18-month process to get these disaster preparedness and mitigation documents updated, to look at, actually we're going to select about 15 case studies around the state. We're in the process of that right now. And our consultant will work with those cities to do some local guidelines and modeling and things that can be used by other communities in the state, local government, state government, to help us prepare for disasters. Our consultant is Preservation Design Professionals, and Dominique Hawkins is their PI, and she's done a lot of work in St. Augustine and New Orleans, and especially some work for Maryland, the state of Maryland, for flooding and disaster, and Annapolis, Maryland, which has experienced a lot of these issues. So we're excited to work with her. We have been filling a lot of positions, which is great, especially in our compliance and review section and our National Register section. We're currently working on a new hire. We have promoted Corey Lentz, who's one of our architectural historians. He works in our compliance section, and he has now been promoted to assist me with the federal historic tax credit reviews. So he's done a lot of help so far. I'm happy to announce that we have 2 new certified local government. One is Davie, which was certified on July 20th, and then Martin County was certified on June 4th. And so that brings us to 80 CLGs in Florida, which is one of the highest in the nation. And then I wanted to update you on well, actually, I want to first thank the National Register Review Board for their time and effort yesterday and for reviewing all of the nominations. And let you know of the listings that we have had since the last time we met. There have been 5 new listings. Old Howard Academy in Monticello, Jefferson County, the Lakeside Hospital in Defuniak Springs in Walton County, the Eden Mansion in Port Washington vicinity in Walton County, the Panama City Publishing Building, which I know was a grant project in the past in Panama City, and then the Huguenot Cemetery in St. Augustine, and that is actually a territorial period site. Since we're commemorating our territorial bicentennial, we had made an effort to try to list some territorial period properties on the National Register. And I think we'll get to this shortly, but our next NR meeting is scheduled for November 4th at 1:30 p.m. So if there's any conflicts, please let us know. And that's it. If you have any questions, I will take those.
Questions?
Yes, this is Rick.
Yes, Rick.
I just want to congratulate you for the conference because it was a wonderful conference. I love the synergy of working with the Main Street program and the Florida Trust. And I've been going to conferences for a long time, and I hope it continues to grow as it did this past July. So I want to really thank you for that. And then I had a question in regards to staff architects. Have you been able to hire any staff architects?
We have not so far. I guess we are just going to put that out again as it was before and see if we can get, so we need to, I guess Tim and I need to talk about reopening that. It's just fell off my radar.
Yeah, the truth is, just to be candid about it, that, unfortunately, state salaries for those positions are not competitive with the private sector. And Rick, you guys on the private sector must be hiring lots of folks right now.
That's exactly spot on, Tim. And I've been looking at the staff salaries of other staff people. And boy, you pay very, very low, $40,000 to $45,000 for all the work that you guys do. That I find that just stunning that the government doesn't have more funds available. There's no way you're not going to get an architect for $45,000, and all the other staffers. So I'm begging you, talk to the secretary or if we can, to raise the salaries to be more competitive, or we're never going to have another architect on our board. And that's not good. That's not good.
We work with the funds that were appropriated and just do the best we can.
Okay, well, if we can help talk to anybody to get you more funding for salaries, I think that should be a priority.
certainly.
And thank you, Alyssa, again. Excellent job with the conference.
Thank you so much. And I should have also said that we announced our location for the conference next year, since we're already always in a Main Street community. Next year's conference will be in DeLand, and so we'll be partnering with Stetson University to have a lot of the sessions there. And if you haven't been to DeLand, they have a wonderful and large downtown. So we're excited to be with them next year.
Thank you, Alyssa. Any other questions from commissioners? Angie, Dr. Tomlinson, how about a grants update?
Hi, good morning. I don't have a lot of updates. I just want to focus on our current grant application cycle, which closed for both small matching and special category on June 1st. So since June 1st, our grant staff has been reviewing all of those applications. Because our small matching meeting is, public meeting is August 24th and 25th, they've already finished those and released those to the small matching panel at the end of July, a couple weeks ago. So we had 63 small matching applications, of which 51 were determined eligible or not withdrawn. So those are moving forward. That's a request of about 1.8 million total in those 51 applications. And we had 87 special category applications, which are currently still being reviewed. We're going to be getting those released to you all to start looking at in the next 2.5 weeks before the end of August. Currently, we have already either had withdrawn or determined ineligible for. So right now we're at 80, what is that math? 83, unless, more could be withdrawn or determined ineligible, but it's looking like you'll be receiving somewhere around low 80s, maybe high 70s to review for the special category applications. The total amount of the request of all 87 that were submitted was 23 million. So, and last year, you reviewed 67 eligible applications totaling about 17 million. So again, those will be released to you via our grant system as usual, probably the last week of this month, so a couple weeks from now. And as a reminder, since you're always interested in your calendar, the special category meeting is scheduled currently for September 28th and 29th, which is a Tuesday and Wednesday. We are currently planning to go back to in-person meetings unless something changes, but as of right now, it will be, the review session will be in the R.A. Gray Auditorium as usual, but also with the webinar option for anyone who can't come in person from around the state. And once we release the applications to you in the DOS grant system, you'll be getting contacted. Most of you are familiar with this. I think all but one of you, Commissioner Clay, did not participate last year. We do all the scoring, the reviewing and scoring as usual through our DOS grant system. You'll be getting an email if you're new to the system to create an online user account and password. If you've done it in the past, it will be your same one. But again, that will be a reminder coming from our grant system, and any questions related to that, we're here to help you getting into the system and reviewing these applications. Our grant supervisor, Tim Konepke, will also be following up with you. And as usual, we'll also do a webinar, probably the week or so after we release those, to just walk you through the program, refresh you on the program, walk you through the system again. And of course, hopefully we'll have some new members as well, so they'll need that for sure. And I think that's about it for now, unless you have any additional questions. We did also, I believe, send you, as you had requested and would really like, some in the meeting materials, some updates on a few of our open grants, so you should have received that from Sarah as well. But other than that, that's about it for me, just really focusing on the application cycle and the review that's coming up. So that's what grant staff is doing right now.
Thank you, Angie. Are there questions for Dr. Tomlinson?
I have one. This is John. How are you able to say how many of the applications that you've received this year are the same as applications that were submitted last year?
I don't know that off the top of my head. We did reach out to, back when the budget was signed and we knew that we weren't getting special category funded, we did reach out to all of the applicants in both small matching and special category and told them to reapply if they wanted to just be safe on it. So I'm sure there are a handful, but I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. But also, there always are in special category because the full list usually doesn't get funded. There usually are a lot of repeat customers as well, even if, regardless of whether or not the list was funded or vetoed, because there's so many that don't get funded towards the end of it as well. So, but unfortunately, I can get you that number if you want it.
Well, it might be helpful to tag the ones that are returned, are reapplications, let's say. I do think that would be helpful to me because if I've already gone through it and I may have my notes on it, it may save a little time in going through the whole package.
Okay, that's something I'm sure we can provide in the the application materials when we release those in the system. We can probably do a document that we upload for the panel that you could see which ones were applications that you had reviewed from last year.
Thank you.
Other questions for Angie? Thank you very much. 8 business items. Dates for upcoming meetings. I think, Sarah, that's come up, but we might just go over them quickly.
Sure. The next National Register Review Board meeting, which some of you serve on, is November 4th at 1:30 p.m. And the next FHC business meeting is November 5th at 9 or 9:30. I guess we'll make that decision when we get closer, depending on if we're still doing it online or in person. And then, of course, as Angie just mentioned, you have the special category meeting September 28th and 29th. So that is between now and November.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Lico? All right. Other business. Who wants to say something about something?
Well, this is Sarah. I guess I'll let you guys know about the Hurricane Michael grant. So those are the sub-grants that we're doing through the disaster grant from National Park Service. We sent out funding notifications for those applicants that are getting funded through that program.
Good, good. Commissioners.
Marion, this is John Phelps. I'm not speaking from any kind of inside information that I have from the Senate or anywhere else, but I do know that there's a great deal of federal money that's coming our way. Some of it's still out there that we're getting from last year. And I think most of it is going to be viewed as non-recurring funds. And what that means to the legislature is if there are projects out there, such as restoration projects, such as the kinds of things we tend to focus our efforts on, I think those kinds of projects might be perfect, a perfect application of those funds. It gives economic support because of the project, the work involved in restoring the projects and so forth. So it's perfectly justifiable from the point of view of economic support. And I think this might be an opportunity for the secretary to talk a little bit about that with the people he needs to talk to in the appropriations committees, because I think this is a perfect application of those recurring funds. Just one observation.
Interesting. Tim, how can we take that and be active if that's our job?
Well, I know right now we haven't been informed, and at least as far as I know, the secretary hasn't been informed of any additional funds that are related to those federal pots of money that are coming our way. That's not to say they won't, they may, and I know that, you know, they've already started discussions with OPB about, you know, budgetary expectations, at least with regard to the governor's budget. And so the next opportunity I have, I'll mention that possibility that there may be other funds out there that could be applicable to our programs that we could potentially use to sub-grant. And I'll see if I can, you know, kickstart that conversation.
Thanks, Tim. That would be great.
Sounds great. Maybe if something happens, you could just give us, Sarah could send an update by email or whatever, just so we know what's going on. It's rather interesting. I hadn't realized any of that.
Oh, certainly, yeah. And it's interesting because there's a lot of federal money going through all kinds of pipes to all different agencies, you know, and it gets in the weeds, but a lot of it even looks like state funds and has been appropriated in GR, but it's actually federal money, so it gets sort of weird as we've learned over the last few months. So, you know, John is absolutely right. There's a lot of money floating around out there, and you know, where it ends up, I don't know, but I certainly wouldn't mind if more of it came our way for us to sub-grant.
We just need to be in the queue.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is Matt. I completely agree with John, and thinking about the timeline of things, the agencies right now are working through their legislative budget requests to be able to submit to the governor. And even if the funds aren't specifically spelled out yet, which is a little odd, but it's how Washington works, unfortunately, sometimes, in as much as you know, they pass things without necessarily promulgating the rules for how those funds get specifically designated. You know, we gotta get ourselves in the queue for these kinds of things. And if the funds materialize, great. If they don't materialize, okay, no harm, no foul. But we certainly need to be you know, in front of mind presence for the folks that are going to be advocating for the governor's budget, and then certainly for the legislature as well.
Excellent. Other comments regarding
Amy,
this or other business?
Amy, other business, Rick?
Yes, please.
Just a quick update on the Advisory Council of Historic Preservation. Number one, we're part of a federal committee now, starting to plan the 250th anniversary of our great nation in 2026. So that just was launched this summer. I'm no longer the interim chairman, thank goodness. They've now have a lady chairperson who is going through Senate confirmation as we speak. Hopefully she'll be on board in the next couple of months. And there has been from the Biden administration a strong push towards climate change. So the ACHP is trying to work with all the other federal agencies on historic properties and how they're being impacted by climate change. And the last item I wanted to mention too was in regards to a good friend of ours, Marty Hilton, who many of you know, who is now left the Historic Preservation Program at the University of Florida, and he has started at the National Park Service. He will be the first time ever architect on historic preservation and climate change. So he has a lot of leeway to do a lot of good things in the country based on all his research that he did in Nantucket and in St. Augustine.
Wonderful. What are they doing at the University of Florida's preservation program? Do you have any idea there, Rick? I don't.
Well,
their board of
I do.
advocates no longer meets, so.
I do. I think one of the things is that there was a young lady architect, Cleary Larkin. I'm not sure if you all have met her or not.
Yes. Yes.
She's also a doctor, right? And she has been under Marty, and she is now the interim. And a lot of us on the board are asking to make her permanent, you know, and don't go for a national search, because she has been on this very, very successful program for at least 5 years, and hopefully she will become the permanent chairperson. The board is scheduled to meet again in October in New York City. And next year will be the 50th, believe it or not, unbelievable, the 50th anniversary of the PIN program in Nantucket. Next fall.
Wonderful.
2022.
Excellent. Well, you'll keep us apprised to that, I hope, under other business at another meeting.
Yes, I always will try.
Good. Those are most interesting facts. Are there any other factoids to share with commissioners? Well, how about some public comment? Is there anybody out there? I hear no one. Are we ready to adjourn? If so, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Likewise, object. Okay, that's
I
it.
would
Thank
like-
you all so much. It was
Marion,
very
Marion,
speedy. Yes.
Marion, I want to say one thing before we let you go, that you have done a wonderful job as chair of this program.
Amen.
Many, many
Amen.
years.
Oh,
And
Yes.
all of us
thank
are
you.
extremely grateful for your efforts.
Well, thank you very much. I've enjoyed it, and you guys make it, and gals, are there any gals there? Judy's not there today. Made it very easy. We're all knowledgeable in our own fields. When we come together, it kind of sparks some good things. So thank you
Hey,
guys. Appreciate it.
Amy, if I can add to that too, I was very upset with the Lee County attorney implying stupidity at yesterday's meeting. So, we got your back. We got your back. We know
Yes,
that
yes.
you are a
Well,
great person and you do great work. So
Well, thank you. It just comes from doing so much preservation like you do around Florida. I have
Exactly.
my hands in everything.
exactly.
Okay,
I want to
gang.
reach through the phone and beat him up.
Oh, I wish you could have. That would have been nice. Okay.
Well, if
Sorry,
I can
I'm
I
inciting
can
violence. I'm inciting
make
violence.
one comment, thank you for your service, Marion. It's always been a pleasure to
listen.
work with you. This is
I
Cliff Smith.
appreciate that. And yes, thank you, Cliff. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that I am being removed after 30 years of on and off. So it's been great. But
You're not
enough
off
is
here
enough.
yet. You're not away from us yet. So
I
I'm
know,
not
but
gonna
there
say
is
goodbye.
hope.
You may,
Yeah.
Well, I was just
There
going to
is
say,
hope.
you're not gone yet, but I can tell you as a relatively new member here, certainly your leadership has been great, and obviously your dedication and commitment to Florida is fantastic, and I certainly appreciate it. So thanks.
Thank you all very much. Very heartwarming. All right, then I'm going to say goodbye, and I hope to see you again in the audience someday.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.